The heavy rain that fell over Seoul that morning seemed to echo the heaviness in the hearts of everyone watching. Outside a quiet district police station, media and fans gathered in solemn anticipation. But what they didn't expect was the scene that unfolded next. Not just Jungkook arriving to give his statement, but the quiet presence of his family, escorted by none other than Jin. Dressed in black with a simple mask covering most of his face, Jin guided Jungkook's mother past the crowd, holding an umbrella over her trembling frame. Her face was pale, eyes swollen with sleeplessness. Rumors had swirled that a family member had been home during the Seokjin intrusion, and now, seeing her in person, it felt all too real. She didn't speak to the press. She didn't need to. Her presence said everything. Jin walked beside her, calm but protective, like an older brother not just to Jungkook, but to the entire family. He had personally coordinated the schedule with police officers to ensure the family could avoid public attention. He had contacted a lawyer to sit in on the interrogation process. He had arranged for private transport and additional security outside their residence. For Jin, this was no longer about celebrity. It was about safety,
dignity,
healing. Inside the station, while Jungkook gave his statement to investigators, his mother waited silently in the family room. Jin stayed with her, offering her tea, whispering assurances, and holding her hand when her shoulders trembled with the weight of fear. She wasn't a public figure. She had never asked for this life. Yet, here she was, caught in the darkest part of her son's fame. Sources close to the family revealed that Jin had stepped in even before the incident reached the press. It was Jin who called Jungkook that night when the security alarm went off. It was Jin who drove to his home first. And it was Jin who insisted that the family be involved in the investigation, not to protect BTS's image, but to protect Jungkook's peace. Reporters, trying to catch a glimpse, were stopped by a tight circle of private security. HYBE remained absent from the scene. No official spokesperson. No legal team from the company. Only Jin. And that absence spoke volumes. In that moment, it became clear to everyone watching. The protection that should have come from the label was now being carried entirely by one man. As they left the station, Jungkook briefly nodded to the cameras, his expression guarded, but less broken than before. His mother followed quietly behind, flanked again by Jin. One moment, she paused. Turning toward Jin, she whispered something that the press couldn't hear. But those close enough saw her clutch his hand tightly, almost as if saying thank you for standing in the place where others should have been, and Jin, with quiet resolve, nodded back. Because he wasn't just Jungkook's hyung that day. He was his protector, his family's shield, the voice of justice when the world fell silent. And as the cameras clicked, the headlines began to write themselves, not about fame, not about scandal, but about something far deeper. Loyalty, brotherhood, and the cost of safety in a world that refuses to give it freely. As the car doors closed behind them and the convoy pulled away from the police station, silence lingered inside the vehicle. Jungkook sat in the middle seat, his posture stiff, hands clenched on his knees. His mother sat beside him, her gaze out the window, lost in a sea of blurred city lights and flashbacks she wished she could forget. And Jin sat on the other side, silent, calm, but vigilant. His eyes stayed fixed ahead, not on the road, but on the thoughts that burned deeper than anything flashing outside the tinted glass. He was already thinking 10 steps ahead. The moment they reached Jungkook's home, now heavily guarded, Jin didn't leave. He made sure security had been doubled, that cameras were installed in every blind spot, that someone from their private network would monitor activity overnight. Not because he had to, but because he couldn't sleep knowing Jungkook's family was still vulnerable later that evening. As Jungkook lay down for a brief rest, Jin sat with his mother in the kitchen. She looked at him with a quiet, aching gratitude that words couldn't quite express. They talked in hushed tones about the night of the break-in, how she had heard a sound, how her breath had caught, how the fear had paralyzed her until help arrived. She admitted she hadn't slept since. She was haunted not just by what happened, but by what could have happened. Jin listened, really listened. Not as a celebrity, not as a colleague of her son, but as a human being who understood what it felt like to be left unprotected. He promised her that no matter how long the case took, he would walk beside Jungkook and the family. To every police meeting, every legal proceeding, every courtroom if necessary. "You're not alone in this," he said gently. He's not alone. And that promise wasn't just for her. It was a message to everyone watching, to HYB, to the press, to the industry. Jin was stepping into a role no one asked him to fill, but one that desperately needed filling. A protector not just in spirit, but in action. The following day, reports began to circulate that Jin had scheduled a meeting with a private investigator to review how the Seokjin had breached Jungkook's home. At the same time, legal filings were quietly updated, an expansion of charges that included endangerment of family and mental harm. Jungkook's legal team, now partly advised by external experts Jin helped contact, were preparing for a full-scale case, not just a complaint, and Jin was there for every step. When Jungkook hesitated about going public with the details, Jin reassured him. "We don't owe them vulnerability, but we do owe it to ourselves to make sure this never happens again." By now, fans around the world had caught wind of the deeper truth, that behind the official silence of the company, behind the carefully curated press releases, stood a bond more powerful than any corporate brand could ever represent. A brotherhood, a promise. That night, Jin posted a message on Weverse. It was short, without drama, but it said everything. "We are safe, but this isn't over. Thank you for standing with us. I'll protect him with everything I have." No names were mentioned. No drama was exploited. But ARMY knew, and the world listened. What began as a moment of fear had now become a movement of resilience. Not led by managers, not orchestrated by PR teams, but by someone who simply refused to let his brother carry the weight alone. And so, with each new sunrise, as the investigation deepens and legal action unfolds, one image remains etched in the minds of millions. Jin, standing in the storm, not behind Jungkook, but beside him, a shield. As a brother, as the protector this world failed to be. As morning broke over Seoul once again, a quiet shift had begun within the walls of the industry. No longer was the Seokjin incident treated as just another unfortunate episode in a long list of celebrity invasions. It had evolved into something else, something deeper, more human, and far more powerful, because Jin had chosen not to let the headlines fade. 2 days after the police report was filed, Jin was seen once again accompanying Jungkook and his legal team to a follow-up meeting with prosecutors. This time, the atmosphere was different. There were more eyes watching, more officers present, and an undeniable tension that hung in the air. The city knew something serious was underway. Jin had changed the tone. He had forced the world to take this case seriously, not as a media scandal, but as a warning. This could happen to any idol, to any family, to anyone inside the room. Jungkook sat quietly, his eyes scanning every line of the report. He wasn't shaking like he did the first day. He wasn't silent like he was that night. He was still afraid, but now he was focused. Because Jin was there, Jin didn't say much, but his presence filled the room. When legal language felt overwhelming, he simplified it. When decisions had to be made, he looked to Jungkook and asked him, not anyone else, "Are you comfortable with this?" In an industry where idols are often spoken over, managed, and protected by lawyers with more loyalty to brands than to people, Jin flipped the script. He centered the victim. He gave voice to the one who needed it most, and he never left his side. A tea night, back at Jungkook's home, Jin stayed in the guest room closest to the front door. Not because he needed to, but because he wanted to be the first to respond if anything happened. He even took shifts with the new security team to monitor the CCTV footage, watching, waiting, ensuring that the nightmare didn't return. It wasn't about paranoia. It was about healing, control, taking back what was stolen. Their sense of peace. Jungkook's mother, now slightly more composed, had begun to call Jin our guardian. She would cook small meals and leave them at his door, bowing slightly each time they crossed paths. At one point, Jungkook's father called in from overseas. Jin answered. He didn't need to explain anything. The respect in his tone, the gravity in his voice, told the father everything he needed to know. In private moments, Jungkook asked Jin why he was doing so much, why he was carrying so much weight. Jin's answer was simple: because someone has to show them we're not just idols, they can't just break into our lives and walk away. And because if I don't stand up for you, who will? The sincerity in those words echoed longer than anything else. Because the truth was, Jin had seen too much in his years in the spotlight. He had watched fellow idols collapse from pressure, watched stalkers get away with warnings, and watched agencies prioritize profits over people. Not this time. The momentum built quickly. Media outlets began digging deeper. News anchors stopped calling it a "saying incident" and began using the words home invasion and psychological assault. Advocacy groups reached out to Jin and Jungkook's team to collaborate on drafting stronger anti-stalker laws in Korea. Politicians began issuing statements. The ripple effect of Jin's presence was turning into a wave, and at the center of it, Jin remained composed, but fierce. He turned down every interview, declined every sponsorship offer that tried to capitalize on a sudden surge in public admiration. When asked why, he replied, "This isn't about me. It's about making sure no one else feels this powerless again." Army across the globe mobilized. Petitions began circulating calling for legislative change. Hashtags like #ProtectKPopIdols and #JusticeForJungkook dominated social media. And through it all, Jin and Jungkook stayed out of the spotlight. They weren't chasing attention. They were chasing justice. Weeks passed. The Seokjin was officially indicted. Charges included trespassing, attempted harassment, and endangering a civilian family. It was a legal victory, but more than that, it was a cultural shift. For the first time, an idol didn't just suffer in silence. He fought back, with his brother beside him, and long after the court closed its doors, long after the cameras disappeared, Jin remained. Not because he had to, but because love, loyalty, and healing demand presence, not perfection. They say fame isolates. But in this case, brotherhood bridged what fear tried to break. Jin didn't just accompany Jungkook to the police station. He walked him out of a nightmare, one step, one silent promise, one sleepless night at a time. What began as a terrifying invasion of privacy became a turning point not only for Jungkook and his family, but for the entire K-pop industry. At the heart of it all stood Jin, not just as a global superstar, but as a protector, a brother, and a symbol of what real support looks like. His unwavering presence during police reports, legal consultations, and emotional breakdowns sent a clear message. Idols are human, their families deserve safety, and silence is no longer an option. Jin's decision to stand beside Jungkook, not behind company walls or PR statements, changed the narrative. He turned a Seokjin incident into a human rights issue, and his actions may pave the way for stricter laws and stronger protections for all artists in the future. In the end, Jin's loyalty did more than just comfort a friend. It ignited a movement toward justice, dignity, and a safer future for everyone living under the spotlight.